In today's video, I'm going to discuss two major risks that Palantir faces in the short to medium term future, as well as one potentially bullish indicator. And then I'm going to talk about my search for information on Palantir's contracts with the government of Canada, because that search has been ongoing for quite some time now. All right, let's get right into it. So the first major risk that I see for Palantir on the horizon is this potential NHS or National Health Service deal in the United Kingdom. Now, this deal is a major contract worth £480 million, which is around $500 million, and it's basically to become the operating system of the entire UK healthcare system. So this is a very big deal. And Palantir is competing against a consortium of UK companies, and there's a couple of different forces at play here. Now, obviously, if Palantir gets this contract, it's going to be a huge deal, not just because of the dollar figure that's attached to it, but also because of the prestige that's going to come along with it, and the fact that it could open up other doors into different parts of the UK government, and also potentially into different healthcare systems in other countries around the world. On the other hand, if Palantir loses this contract to the consortium from the UK, then it's probably going to have an impact on the short-term price of the stock, because it's going to come along with some pretty bad press, and the momentum really isn't going to be in Palantir's favor after that. Now, normally when it comes to public procurement, I wouldn't say that it's really a major risk, but with this contract in particular, the fact that it's worth so much money, and also the fact that it's already become a pretty major public issue in the UK, comes along with some risks. For starters, there are a couple interest groups in the UK that want to portray Palantir as this mysterious sort of spy agency that's backed by Peter Thiel, who has also been a Trump supporter in the past. And since Palantir's also worked with, for example, border security institutions in the United States, there's basically a group of people that is suggesting that we don't want to let Palantir have access to our private healthcare data, and so we don't want Palantir getting this contract. Now, I'm not going to get really into the details of these different claims, because I don't actually think that what these groups are saying represent the facts. And in fact, Palantir has already had a pilot program in the UK with the healthcare system where it's actually effectively managed to reduce the wait times for cancer patients by 28%, which is obviously going to save lives. In fact, listen to this direct quote from the NHS themselves. So far, the solution, referring to Palantir, has enabled a 28% reduction in the inpatient waiting list through validation and better clinical oversight. Booking lead times have almost tripled, meaning that patients can be notified to come in for surgery in a more timely manner, reducing the number of cancellations, and over the past 3 months, surgery theater utilization has improved from 73% to 86%, which is a major positive. Also, outside of the UK, Palantir's entry into the healthcare sector has been going very well. They've been growing pretty rapidly, and in fact, according to Goldman Sachs, Palantir now works with 4 large organizations that represent nearly 10% of the entire US hospital system, including the Cleveland Clinic and Tampa General. Also, a lot of the claims that Palantir is going to have access to people's personal private healthcare data and do shady things with them are truly unfounded. That's not the way this system works. It's just a complete misrepresentation of the facts. And finally, a lot of the arguments against Palantir in this case are more so based on ideology rather than any practical, rational argument. And the fact that Palantir is co-founded by Peter Thiel and that Peter Thiel has donated to Donald Trump seems to feature heavily in a lot of the arguments of people that say we don't want Palantir in the NHS. And so, of course, these people would rather have a UK consortium, local companies banding together to provide the same services, but in the past, these types of deals have not worked out well for the NHS. In fact, it has been really perennially poorly managed, and its data in particular has been poorly managed, and that's one of the main reasons why in the first place that Palantir got that pilot program where they effectively managed to reduce the wait times for cancer patients by so much. So while I personally think that the arguments against letting Palantir have this contract don't really have much merit, it doesn't really matter what I think. There's due process in the UK, and for major government procurement contracts like this, it has to go through a competitive process where the merits of the different bids will be assessed against each other. And it is a major risk, because if the court of public opinion, particularly this very vocal minority, wins the day, then the contract could end up going in the other direction, and all of the cascading effects could happen, including potentially a negative impact on the stock price. So this is something to watch closely. All right, the second major risk that Palantir faces in the short to medium term future are the macroeconomic headwinds that the company and really the entire economy is facing. The fact that the Fed has raised interest rates so quickly and to such a high level, and also the fact that we're staring down the barrel of a potential recession, is having an impact on Palantir's revenue, the top line growth, and also is probably going to continue having that sort of impact in the immediate future. At the last earnings call, management revised their growth projections from around 30% year-over-year growth to around 15 to 17%, which is a pretty significant cut, and obviously that's not something that we like to see. This is at least partially because of the macro global operating environment that Palantir is working in. The fact that the cost of debt financing is so much higher means potentially that companies are going to be less focused on growth and trying to really tighten their belts, which means that expensive contracts for software services like those that Palantir offered might not actually be as much of a priority as they were the last couple of years. It is possible that the desire for companies to secure cost savings and become more effective could push some towards Palantir, but I think that in the majority of cases, it's actually going to have a negative impact on demand for these services. And obviously we're seeing that in the projected revenue growth rates coming out of Palantir in the last earning calls. And this means that there's going to be a lot more pressure on Palantir's salespeople to actually go out and find new clients, to focus really more on large scale clients, because small enterprises and even potentially medium-sized enterprises are going to be less likely to sign multi-million-dollar software deals. And then also there's going to be a major focus on retaining existing clients and making sure that the net dollar retention figure that has been so good in the past doesn't drop too far below what it is now. So no matter how you look at it, this is a pretty significant short to medium term risk for Palantir. But what does it mean for investors? Well, I think it might just mean having a little bit more patience, because the type of growth that we were expecting to see over the next 3 to 5 years might be pushed back a little bit further down the road. However, the company itself is in an excellent financial position with basically no debt, significant cash reserves, and even a gold bar reserve that they acquired last year, potentially predicting the sorts of events that we're seeing right now. So the internal finances of the company in this macro environment are not really a concern at all. It's really other companies that we're concerned with, because we need them to buy Palantir's software. Okay, now before I update you on the digging that I've been doing to find out Palantir's contracts with the Canadian government, let's talk about one bullish indicator for Palantir that has come about in the last month or two, and that is the fact that artificial intelligence stocks have really become in vogue and are super popular as a result of ChatGPT becoming very popular. And so we're seeing this not just with companies like Microsoft, which are large, well-established companies, but even more so in smaller companies that are more so in a growth phase. For example, C3 AI is up 130% nearly year to date. Another company, Arista Networks, which works with AI, is up 40% year to date. Now the problem is that Palantir itself is only up 30% year to date, and so has not really been having the same sort of positive impact as a result of this interest in AI. Now, partially this may be because of just a general lack of knowledge about Palantir and what the company does, because it doesn't have AI in its name and it's not necessarily super obvious. But this may just mean that since Palantir has become a bit of a laggard as it compares to other AI-focused companies, that there could be some room for that gap to close. In any case, moving forward, it seems like artificial intelligence is going to be a major part of the conversation. There's a lot more focus on it, and I think this can only benefit Palantir in the long run, because what it really offers is sort of an institutional version of AI, providing an operating system that allows companies to take advantage of their different data systems. So as opposed to being something like ChatGPT, which really focuses more so on the retail sector and answering different questions directly, Palantir is querying private databases of private data to actually provide useful recommendations on how companies or other organizations can improve efficiency and effectiveness. So it is certainly falling within that AI bucket, and hopefully all of this new enthusiasm for artificial intelligence will reflect back on Palantir at some point. All right, finally, let me provide you with a quick update on Palantir's contracts with the Canadian government, because if you haven't seen my previous videos, last year, probably actually about 11, maybe 10 months ago, I submitted an access to information request to the Canadian government, which is something that you can do if you're a citizen, and you can ask to see different types of documents, really about anything. And so I submitted an ATIP request asking about Palantir's contracts with the Canadian government, trying to get a list of all the contracts, trying to see how much money has been spent, and also to get documents, for example, memos and briefing notes that show what the Canadian government, the institution, has been talking about and thinking about as it relates to Palantir. I really wanted to get a good sense of what the Canadian government thinks of Palantir and what types of contracts they have. Now, this process has been dragging out now for almost a year, and I've had several interchanges with the people that are on the other end trying to collect this information for me, and so this is what I can tell you. Essentially, there are hundreds of documents apparently that have been returned, but those have come back suggested to be heavily redacted. And so the people on the other end responsible for providing this information to me are trying to actually go back to the different departments and agencies that have contracts with Palantir and to try to push them to provide more useful information so that I'm not just getting a stack of documents that are completely redacted and blacked out. And it sounds like this process is going to work. It's just going to take time. In fact, they may actually even go to court for me in order to actually force these different institutions around town to provide the information that I'm looking for, because technically there's a bit of a fine line that needs to be walked here between, security and defense and not releasing sensitive information, but on the other hand, the government, which is a democracy, being open and transparent. And that's the whole purpose of these different ATIP requests. So I am still waiting on the response to my query, but the fact that hundreds of documents have actually been returned, even though they've been redacted so far, is a pretty promising sign to me, because it shows that this isn't a situation where just the Canadian government isn't really working much with Palantir or isn't really considering much when it comes to potentially working with Palantir. So I'm really excited to get these documents and to dig into them, and I will share with you the results of this as soon as I can. Hopefully it doesn't take too much longer. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. I know it's been a while since I posted a Palantir update. There's other channels that do daily content, and really I don't feel the need to do that, only if I think I have something interesting or new to add to the conversation. So I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.